Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be offering some suggestions on how to fix all of the current kind of problems and issues that have shown up for the final Season 3. If you don't really know what I'm talking about, you should probably go watch the video I made yesterday, where I kind of just ranted about all of the problems with the Season 3. But to kind of break it down in a pretty simple way, right now, when a new player joins the game, they have to play Terminal Attack. They're forced to play 5 games of Terminal Attack before they can play anything else, which is kind of really, it's not a smart decision, because if there's a new player that comes to their game and they're like, oh my god, the finals, this looks really exciting, it can blow loads of stuff up, it looks like it's going to be really cool, they play a Terminal Attack, the first thing you have to do is wait 25 seconds or wait 20 seconds in a small little square, and they can't move or shoot the enemies or do anything. And it just gives like a really, really awful first impression. And that is the only first impression they have, because again, you have to play Terminal Attack for the first 5 games. So when a new player comes to the finals, they're forced to play it for 5 games before they play anything else. And that's the first thing that has to go. That has to go. And the reason for that is because Terminal Attack is the worst game mode this game has ever had, quite simply. Like, solo Blanket, Power Shift, like the Wild West game mode, pretty much all of the like seasonal event game modes, like they're all better. All of those were better than Terminal Attack. Terminal Attack is by far the worst game mode we have ever had, and especially the ranked version. Like, casual Terminal Attack is better than the ranked version as well, just to say that too. So the way that new players have to play 5 games, that has to go, because the game spent a lot on marketing this season, right? There's a Twitch Rivals event coming up, and also, obviously, they were at the Summer Games Fest, which probably costs a lot of money too. So, a lot of marketing was spent on this game to try and get new players to come in and try it out, and that's also why Terminal Attack was changed, so that players would feel more familiar with it, and because it's not as complicated as Cash Out and all that kind of stuff. But it's an absolutely huge waste of money to spend so much on marketing, and then people try the game out, they play like 3 rounds of Terminal Attack, and then they're like, oh, you know what, I don't really like this, I'm just gonna go back to Rainbow Six Siege or CSGO. It really, really isn't a very smart decision to make players have to play 5 matches of that. I understand it so that they can like be introduced to the game mode and understand how it works, and then they can go and play ranked. I understand that's why it's there, but it doesn't work. Just let them play 5 games of anything before they can play Terminal Attack, or, even better, let them play whatever they want, but before they play ranked Terminal Attack, they have to play 5 games of the normal Terminal Attack. Pretty much any of those would be perfectly okay, but the way that new players have to play 5 games of something, that has to go, because it's just a really, really awful decision, because someone's gonna play it, they're gonna be like, oh, this really isn't that enjoyable, I'm just gonna go back to Rainbow Six Siege. Then they're never going to try the game again. So it really is like a giant waste of the marketing that the game has finally been putting out for the game. So that 100% has to go ASAP. Next thing that has to go is Terminal Attack Ranked. This is simply the worst game mode the game has ever had, and it's just unfortunately this season, where Terminal Attack is the ranked game mode, that the game finally gets all of its marketing and its proper ranked elo and all that kind of stuff, which we haven't had since launch. So the way to fix the rank system right now is to, I don't think this is going to happen, but what should definitely happen is remove Terminal Attack from ranked, because it isn't suitable for a ranked game mode and it doesn't really suit the finals properly, and there's millions of other games that do the exact same thing, so why would you play the finals when it's like just a worse version of things that other games already do, right? So what has to be done is Terminal Attack is removed, and make literally anything else the ranked game mode. I know Terminal Attack was put in because it creates a sense of familiarity with new players, and Cash Out was pretty complicated, but then just don't put in Cash Out as the ranked game mode if you don't want to. I really like Cash Out. I think ranked Cash Out works really well as a game mode. Third partying can be annoying, but it generally happens if one of the teams isn't thinking so much. And I've said this since day one, but I always thought the way to fix Cash Out would be to actually have a proper elo system, which it never had. Because then I think you'd start seeing fewer mistakes, and then also less third partying. Because the way that it works is, when someone third parties, it's usually less favorable for them as well. But people just don't normally think about it, and they normally just go ooga booga and then come third party anyway. So if Cash Out actually had a ranked system and a proper elo system, I think you would start to see a lot less third partying, But I could also be completely wrong on that because there's no real way to test it because we've never actually had a ranked system. But even if you didn't want to make Cash Out the ranked game mode, literally any other game mode would be better than ranked terminal attack. Power Shift would be a very okay game mode because like pretty much everything serves a purpose there. Like medium with healing beam, defibrillator, and APS turret, that's very, very good for Power Shift. You know, heavy with dome shields and barricades and all that, that's very, very good for Power Shift. And the lights with like snipers or the bow now or the thermal bore and like their smoke grenades or gas grenades and all that, they would also be pretty solid in Power Shift because they can dash around the map and they don't actually have to stand on the point, but they can do lots of damage from around the point and all that kind of stuff. Power Shift would be like a pretty solid ranked game mode. Much, much better than terminal attack. So I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's solo bank it that's put in as the ranked game mode instead, but terminal attack is not it, and it's just not going to work out very well. So something else should go in, whether it's Cash Out again, whether it's Power Shift or Bank It or whatever, but terminal attack does need to be changed as the ranked game mode, because what's happening right now is older players are kind of leaving the game and not playing much ranked because terminal attack sucks for the most part. Like most people will agree that terminal attack is a really, really bad game mode to have as ranked. Even people that liked the terminal attack casual game mode dislike the changes that were made to the ranked version because there's much more waiting around and all that kind of stuff, which is fair. So what's happening right now is a lot of people that used to play a lot of ranked aren't really playing ranked that much this season, and that's the same with me as well. Again, because ranked terminal attack isn't really a fantastic game mode. And so old players are kind of leaving and not playing the game as much because they're not playing ranked, so they're not playing like super grindy or anything like that. And newer players that all the marketing was spent on join the game, play 5 games of terminal attack, and then are like, oh, you know what? I don't really love this. I'm going to go back to Rainbow Six Siege because everything's much more balanced there. So you've got both the new players kind of leaving very, very quickly, and the old players also leaving pretty quickly or just not playing the game as much. And that is not good, right? You've got all players leaving and new players leaving. Who's going to be there to play the game, right? That it's not going to work out very well. So something else needs to be the ranked game mode so that both old players can play it and new players can join in and be like, oh, this is actually pretty fun. I can use my gadgets to blow stuff up and take enemies by surprise and come out of areas that they didn't know I was going to come out of. This is going to be, for me, this is a unique new take on the FPS genre. That's why I originally started playing the finals, because it was just unique. That's all it was. And now, if someone launches the finals, they're like, oh, this is like the millions of other games I already have installed in my Steam library. Why would I play this one? Like, the classes are worse balanced, there's only 3 of them. Why would I not just play Apex or CSGO or Rainbow Six Siege? That's what's happening right now. And that's not a very good thing for the game. So I don't know how quickly it's going to happen, but the sooner the ranked mode changes, the better. Because, again, right now, a lot of old players are being like, oh, I don't really love the rank this season. I'm not going to be grinding up to Diamond or even Ruby. I'm just going to sit the season out, come back next season. So that's already creating a pretty big player drop. And the new players that, again, all the marketing was spent on are like, oh, I don't really like this game mode so much. I'm gone. And also, another thing I should mention is the players already gave the finals a go and didn't like it because the balancing was in a pretty bad spot on launch. So when the game launched at the, it wasn't the Summer Games Fest, at the Game Awards, when the game launched at the Game Awards, there were a lot of problems with it. Like, there was a lot of nuking and stuff like that. Some weapons were a little bit overtuned and all that kind of stuff. And the balancing didn't feel great. And I think a couple of people now that are coming back to the finals also would have gave it a go then and then kind of left, and now they've come back. And it's really not going to look good on the game if people tried it and were like, oh, the balancing isn't really that good, I'm going to go play something else. And now they're coming back, and now they're also going to be like, oh, this game mode isn't very good, I'm going to go back and play whatever I usually play. But this is like the game's second attempt at kind of showing everyone it's here, but this is, I think, even a worse look than it originally had. I would much rather have nukes and, you know, cloaking device being quite good and all that kind of stuff back in the game than having terminal attack as the ranked game mode. I think this is a much, much worse decision. The next thing that the developers need to do is stop listening to the player base, because a lot of them really don't know what they're talking about a lot of the time. So stuff keeps getting nerfed, and that's not really good for the game. Actually, you know what, I will say, with the launch of Season 3, there weren't many changes I saw that players were calling for, so I kind of liked that. It's just unfortunate that the one time they didn't listen to the player base, they also introduced terminal attack. But for the most part, I think it would be better if the developers didn't listen to the players so much and just kind of made changes based on like the high elo kind of players, which probably would be easier to do now that terminal attack actually has an elo system. But I think for the most part, it needs to kind of stop listening to player base, because a lot of them don't really know what they're talking about, and they'll be very, very quick to judge everything without really knowing how it actually works. Like, there'll be someone that has an hour played with the bow, and they'll be like, oh my god, the bow is absolutely insane, it has to be nerfed. And then the developers will go and nerf it, even though it's like, okay. You know, that's just an example. I'm not saying that's how the bow is, I'm just giving a kind of random example here. But I think the developers should stop listening to the player base, because I think for the most part, it hasn't led to very good changes. Like, nuking was a really, really cool, unique thing you could do. Yes, it didn't feel good to get insta-killed, but if they just toned it back a little bit, instead of nerfing it completely into the ground, I think it still would have been a really cool mechanic. And now it's just gone. And like C4s used to have 2 charges, and now no one uses those. Breach charges no one used up until recently, and now they've been buffed again, so I've actually got them on here. So just for the most part, I think it would be good if the developers stopped listening to the player base so much, and just kind of balance things however they think it should be balanced, instead of listening to the player base. Now, again, in Season 3, I think a lot of changes were made that the player base wasn't calling for. I know the M60, the Lewis gun, got kind of weird nerfs, and so my kind of suggestion for the balancing of everything is buff stuff instead of nerfing stuff. Because nerfing stuff, I've said this a lot in a lot of my previous videos, but nerfing stuff has continuously led to the gunplay feeling worse. And I remember back when the RPG used to insta-kill a light, and I remember saying, the RPG shouldn't do less damage, the light should get more health. And the light still kind of sucks in the normal game modes, unless it's terminal attack, in which case they're kind of okay. But yeah, I think buffing stuff would be good instead of nerfing stuff, because it just makes the gunplay feel bad. No one wants more visual recoil and harder recoil patterns. It just feels worse. And if you're gonna say, oh, well, making everything have no recoil is going to create less of a skill gap, that's not really true, because then the skill gap just becomes whoever points and shoots the other person more is going to win the fight, instead of, like, it's the same thing, because if everyone gets less visual recoil and an easier recoil pattern, then their skill gap's going to be exactly the same. Like, it's not going to change anything. All it's going to do is make the gunplay feel much, much smoother, and much like you're actually shooting a gun, and less like you're shooting, you know, something with a lot of well, maybe that doesn't make much sense. But anyway, yeah, so that is another thing that I think should be done. I've been saying it for a long time, but the gunplay has progressively, like, felt worse and worse over time. So much so that now I just use stuff that doesn't have recoil and isn't full auto. Like, I used to use the Lewis gun for the heavy, not really using that anymore. I used to use the AKM and the FCAR for the medium, not using those anymore. The only thing that's kind of still there is the XP54 and the M11 for the light. Those are the only two I can bear to use. And it's not that I don't use them because it's, like, hard to use and I can't control the recoil pattern and all that. It's because it just doesn't feel good. The gunplay feels bad. It's like I'm controlling something that I shouldn't be having to control. Like, the XP54 and the M11 feel pretty good. The FCAR, before it's nerfed, felt good as well. Like, I felt like it was pretty easy to control, but you could still see there was some kick to it. And now I don't think it's in a very good place. It just makes the gunplay feel a lot worse than usual. So that's actually why I'm using the bow here, both because it's the new weapon and because it doesn't have any recoil and it feels good to hit the shots and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just buffing instead of nerfing, I think is going to be good, instead of nerfing rather than buffing, which has been happening since the betas, which has progressively made everything worse, pretty much. So yeah. One last thing I want to talk about is, well, just another thing I want to talk about is the everything new introduced in the final Season 3. I think when new stuff is introduced, I would much rather they be a little bit overpowered than a little bit underpowered. And right now, most of the stuff that was introduced is a little bit underpowered. Except the bow. The bow is like a pretty solid weapon. It's like fairly balanced for the most part, I would say. It's like, you know, you have to have very good aim to make it worthwhile. So I'd say that's in a pretty okay space. But the dual katanas for the medium, like, they're just worse than the riot shield. There's really not a whole lot of point in using those as a medium. You might as well just pop the riot shield on instead. I think they must do a little bit more damage, but they're nowhere near as good at defending. You can deflect shots, but it really doesn't do enough damage to be worthwhile. So the medium got a weapon it kind of already has, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And then the heavy got the spear, and the spear is fine. I do think the sledgehammer is just better, though. So again, I think the heavy kind of just also got a weapon that it already had. What could have happened was the medium gets the spear, because then they've got a melee weapon that like does decent damage, unlike the riot shield, which is kind of weak. And the heavy should have got the dual katanas, because then they've got something they can actually block with as well. That would have made much, much more sense to me, and I'm fine with light getting the bow. Or like, the light gets the dual katanas and the medium gets the bow and the heavy sticks with the spear. Or something like that. I think which weapons were given to which classes was a little bit mixed up this season, though, because I feel like there are a lot of classes that already have the same thing. And the light that gets the bow, that's cool, but the light also already has the throwing knives, which is pretty similar, right? So I think the weapons that was introduced for each of the classes should have been switched around a little bit, because medium already has riot shield, and they got the dual katanas, which are both pretty much the same thing. Heavy gets the spear when it already has the sledgehammer, which are both pretty much the same thing. And then light gets the bow when it already has the throwing knives, and they're a little bit different, but they're like very similar as well. So I just think that whoever was in charge of like deciding which weapon went to which class maybe just got things a little bit mixed up or something, because it would be nice to have different like stuff that actually mixes things up for each of the classes. And that was not done whatsoever this season. Like, hey, heavy has a big melee weapon you don't want to get close to. Let's give him another one. The medium has a kind of okay weapon that you can block with. You probably shouldn't go close to him though. They got another one. And the light has, hey, this weapon's like really, really tough to use, but it can be really good if you put it in the right hands. And then they got the bow, which is the same as the throwing knife. So that just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, and it was really disappointing to kind of see most of the stuff introduced in Season 3, because it was all like, it was kind of like reskins for stuff that was already there, you know? So if like bow went to medium, and then dual katanas went to light, and then, I don't know, spear went somewhere else or something, I don't know how you would like mix them up. But if they were mixed up, I think that would have been so much better. I think having more diverse weapons for each class would be a lot better and make all of the classes feel more unique, and that just didn't happen this season, which was pretty disappointing. The heavy did get the Winch Claw. I haven't really tried it out a whole lot, so I genuinely can't really comment on how good or bad it is. But we did get the Winch Claw, I suppose. But just for the weapons, it would have been nice to see some more unique stuff. Also, the Thermal Bore, I know we got for the light, but I haven't really had a whole lot of time to try it out. So that's just another thing to talk about. And also, the Spear isn't fantastic, and the dual katanas aren't fantastic either. So maybe we'll be getting a buff to those, but it would be cool if maybe even if stuff was a little bit overpowered when it came to the game, so everyone was trying it out and, you know, people could see that there's more unique stuff to the finals now. I would honestly prefer that, rather than the meta being exactly the same as it has been since the betas, right? So I would actually prefer having stuff be a little bit overtuned when it comes to the game, and that hasn't really happened yet. Like in Season 2, stuff was pretty weak as far as I can remember. I don't really remember back in Season 1 because that was a long time ago. But I think next season, when Season 4 comes, I think it would be really interesting to just have stuff, like, definitely strong, let's say, and then after a week or so, like, nerf it back into the, like, just nerf it back a little bit. I think that would be fine. I think Warzone does that, and I'm, like, very okay with that, because then obviously you see everyone using the new weapons and stuff, and it definitely makes stuff feel like there's, like, a new meta. You should come play the game. Everything's kind of different from how it was before. There's new stuff to try out. I think that would just be a lot better and probably a lot, healthier for the game, because it's not really nice coming back from a new season. I mean, coming back to a new season, rather, and then the meta's still exactly the same. I'm not saying that's the case, because obviously we have a whole new rank system as well, but it doesn't really feel like a whole lot of people are using many of the new weapons, right? Unless you're a light. But anyway, yeah, I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the most part. The main points of this video are probably the first ones where the rank should be changed and all that, but anyway, thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to be it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Farewell.